Everyone, JVD here from the Villains of Man, bringing you another comic book review over The Flash, The Speed of Darkness, issues 9 through 13, under the Rebirth banner. I'd like to make note before I start this, even though in the trade paperback collects 9 through 13, which I try to do these reviews based on a whole story arc, so basically when the trade is released, I try to cover all the issues in the trade. 9 and 13 you can consider to be filler books, even though 9 has a really interesting moment in it, and that's about it, all it is. So basically, the Speed of Darkness story is only through issues 10 through 12. But to start the first issue off, just issue 9, you get okay. Before I start this, when I did the review for the first arc of Flash Rebirth with Godspeed, we have two Wally Wests now. We have a white kid, the original Wally West, and now there's this black kid named Wally West. And so I was thinking, how do I distinguish them with reviews? Because obviously they're going to play an important part in the Flash. So the original Wally West, he's going to be Red Wally. The new Wally West, he's going to be Yellow Wally because his suit is yellow and red. So therefore, you'll know who I'm talking about when I mention them. Now, in issue 9, it's just a big filler. There's not a whole lot in the story. Basically, you see where the Speed Force was trying to absorb Barry, and it takes both Red and Yellow Wally to save him. He kind of lashes out at Yellowberry and tells him the fact that Daniel, his uncle, was Reverse Flash, but he even takes a step further and lets him know that it was actually his dad. So he gets to see a little history, which ties into the 3-part The Speed of Darkness story, which I'll get to soon. Another interesting point is it makes him jealous, and he feels like the Flash doesn't trust him because now he finds out there's another Kid Flash. But he gets to talk to his friend Chunk, and Chunk reminds me, even though I'm not a teenager, kind of reminds me of myself. He's telling Yellow Wally about Golden Age comics and this new kid at the comic book shop who knows all about Golden Age comics, and he's awesome at D&D. He's a great dungeon master, which here on the Villains Man we love D&D. So make sure you're watching our current game, The Ancient War Reborn, which we're getting close to wrapping up. But reading this, he's an overweight black teenager with glasses and very short-cut hair, and for some reason all I could think of was Cleveland Brown Jr., so that's the voice I read him with. It's kind of funny. So every time he had dialogue through this trade paperback, that's all I could hear. So, and obviously, much like Mark Hamill being the I can't even talk, Joker, that's what I'm going to hear. But in the end, Flash said he's seen a vision while he was being pulled in by the Speed Force, and it's Jay Garrick's hat. So I'm pretty interesting to see where that goes. He has been missing in since the New 52. A lot of the old Justice Society guys have been, so maybe he's lost in the Speed Force. Who knows? So let's get into the meat of the story, The Speed of Darkness, issues 10 through 12. Basically, this is about the character of the Shade and how he is turned from evil to good, and his shadows kind of resent him for it. They can feel that he is pushing them away, and so they don't want it. So they are acting out on their own. He has no control over them, and he is this shadow stalking Central City. And basically, they took this girl named Hope that he was in love with from him, hoping to turn him back to a life of evil. So he's seeking out the Flash, and basically, Yellow Wally tries to stop him, gets sucked into this place he calls the Shadowland. Iris finds out about it, gets sucked into the Shadowland along with Barry. So, the Shade has sought them out looking for help. So, basically this whole thing is the light versus the darkness. The Shade even mentions the Flash, that it is said that the Shadowland was the darkness that existed before God brought the light, and this is where he banished it, which I thought that was really cool. Being a fan of DC's mystical stuff, I thought that was really interesting. And I've never read anything with the Shade. Not off the top of my head, I can't think I have. So I'm really curious to read some more about this character. Basically, you come to find out that the shadows are as quick as both Yellow Wally and the Flash. So basically, the light cannot outrun the dark. So they're having to use the lightning they generate from the Speed Force to beat said creatures. So that's pretty interesting. But the Shade points out to them that this thing called the Tower of Darkness, which is, very cliche name based on the story. They couldn't come up with anything more clever. Is basically going to open a gateway to Earth and unleash all the shadows. And come to find out, that is where Hope and Iris are. And they have become the queens of this Shadowland. And basically, it takes all of them to defeat them. The Shade is powerless. And basically, Yellow Wally and Flash generate enough force that they punch, and it creates a burst of light that basically teleports them out of Shadowland and back to Central City. So, not the greatest story. I felt like, much like issue 9 and 13, which I'm about to get to, this whole story arc was almost filler arc. I don't feel like there was anything here that mattered, that would continue to tell an ongoing story, kind of like what you've seen in Lightning Strikes Twice before this. That they were dropping hints of stuff that will be around. So, it's not a bad story, but it's not enough that really wants to draw you in. It was a quick read. You could literally skip issue 9, skip issue 13, just read this and probably continue on with the rest of the series. That's kind of how I felt reading it. You see, there's a part in this story when the shadows are becoming overwhelming and dogpiling Yellow Wally and Flash, and Flash is trying to get him to vibrate through them so they can't hurt them, and he can't do it. They do a flashback where he's trying to teach him how to vibrate through walls, and Yellow Wally just can't do it. So he displays a power that Barry doesn't have, and basically he can disrupt molecular bonding with the Speed Force. So that's once again, that's a new power that we've seen displayed in all these speedsters that's happened since the storm. So, he does this fast track. Dr. Mina, she was able to sense the Speed Force, and people in Godspeed could literally be in two places at one time. He could split himself. So I'm curious to see with some of these other speedsters that's been around the Flash universe. Maybe they've developed new powers. So I'm curious to see where that goes. Hope, the Shade's love interest, when she's in the Shadowland, she kind of reminded me of the Goblin Queen from X-Men in a way. She's red hair and she's got the very Victorian goth look going on. So I'm kind of a fan of that look. It's kind of hot. But that's just kind of what it reminded me of, so I thought that was really cool. In the beginning of the story, you get to see Yellow Wally take out a character called Paper Cut. And basically he is doing origami and throwing it at people and cutting them. He's in the park and he wants to take all their money. It's kind of a goofy character. But he was pale and he had very white dreadlocks. And he looked like a character, one of the twins from Matrix Reloaded. So hopefully that's just a character they don't do anything else from. But this whole thing just builds up to trust. Even issue 9, it's, Yellow Wally wants Flash to trust him. And Flash can't do it because basically he's an irresponsible teenager, and it's about Yellow Wally becoming responsible. And then when you get to issue 10, it's Barry and Iris are going on a date while Yellow Wally is fighting Tar Pit. And there's not a whole lot to this story at all. It's basically just a filler episode. These are comics, so it's an issue. There's not a lot to it. So if you read this story, if you've got this trade paperback and you're trying to read everything consecutively, this probably doesn't hurt you to skip. If you're wanting the main story that the trade paperback's named after, which is The Speed of Darkness, you could skip issue 9 and issue 13 altogether. But this read fast. I just wasn't really that drawn to it, though I was drawn to the idea of Shade and what was going on with his character. But other than that, you don't get a whole lot going on in the Flash universe during this. So, but I'm JVD. This has been my review for The Speed of Darkness from the Flash Rebirth. Keep reading, guys.